Friend makes a very important point. I think there has been, we tend to talk about survivors coming forward to give evidence, but of course there may be people who are aware of things that took place, who are not themselves survivors, but who may have seen things happening, perhaps in a children's home or in some other setting, and are aware of that. And I would encourage all such people to come forward as well to give their evidence, because it will be valuable for the inquiry.
Campbell. The inquiry look into old inquiries like Operation Rose in Northumberland, now becoming known as a big whitewash?
It will be, the inquiry will have, as I've indicated, a significant historical reach in terms of its the work that it is doing, and it will look at all evidence that it needs to take forward. I would expect it to look at previous inquiries that have taken place in order to ascertain what was happening and what lessons need to be learned.
Duncan Hames.
I commend the Home Secretary for taking up the suggestion made by my honourable friend, the member for Wells, some months ago of looking to the Commonwealth to find an unquestionably independent chair for this inquiry, and in particular for the close coordination with the inquiry that she has outlined by the police Operation Hydrant. It has been a difficult journey since the Home Secretary first agreed to hold this inquiry. What lessons has she learned for the benefit of other ministers who may find themselves in a position of needing to commission an inquiry in future?
I'm grateful to my honourable friend for that. I think what lessons have I learned? I think the importance of listening to survivors is one of the things that we have that I have seen quite clearly from this. And I think it's one of the issues is the whole question that in the past, very often when one looked at these sorts of inquiries, it was authority sort of doing something to people, if you like, in terms of the authorities making these decisions. I think what we're seeing with this inquiry is the importance of those people who are victims and survivors being part of the process, and that's why it's so important going forward that the survivor's voice will be heard by the inquiry and can input into the inquiry, so that this is not just authority deciding what happens, but it's those who have experience of the issue being considered that are being taken fully along and have their and are able to give their voice and their say, so that what they feel is considered and their expertise is considered.
Mr. Ian Lucas.
Following on from the previous question, last July the Home Secretary made the decision herself to set up a non-statutory panel inquiry. Today she is setting up a statutory inquiry. Why did she make the wrong decision last July?
Well, I've said to the House before that I took the decision to set up the inquiry in the way that I did last July because we had the very good experience of the Hillsborough panel inquiry. And that had done an excellent job. It had come forward with a very hard-hitting report, which has led obviously to other action, and there are now inquests taking place in relation to the incidents in Hillsborough. And that was a good model. Those who had been involved with it felt that it had enabled those, ensured that all the evidence was taken and that the appropriate recommendations were brought forward. However, with all the discussions that have taken place and all the concerns that have been raised, people said that they felt that this inquiry should have statutory powers, and I've taken the decision, and I could very well, I say to the honourable gentleman, I could very well have stood here and carried on with the previous panel inquiry. What I have been willing to say is no, it wasn't right to do it that way. I'm willing to start again. I think that this is the right thing to do. I hope all members of the House consider it so.
Mr. Peter Bowes.
Speaker, can I thank the Home Secretary for coming to the House, the great courtesy of keeping the House regularly informed on this matter. And the difference between an average minister and a great minister is when the minister gets it wrong first, the minister corrects it afterwards, and that's what she's done. Can I ask her on a specific issue about the Official Secrets Act? What if a witness is compelled to give evidence but tries to use the defence that I can't disclose the information because I would break the Official Secrets Act? What is the situation then?
There are arrangements in place for those who are subject to the Official Secrets Act for authorities to be given for them to be able to give evidence, notwithstanding that it would break the Official Secrets Act. But one of the things, this is an issue that is regularly raised, and I will look to make sure that we have the strongest possible arrangements in place to ensure that that can happen.
Julian Smith.
I welcome the statement that foundations that the Home Secretary has set for the review. One of the issues locally in North Yorkshire is the number of bodies responsible for this issue. And talking to victims, they find the lack of coordination and some of the lack of training of people dealing with this issue a problem. When she looks at funding and money, would she have a look at what help she can give to local organisations to work better and closer and in a more coordinated manner on child abuse and child exploitation?
Well, my other friend raises another important issue about how we deal with incidents that are currently taking place. This is a matter which I have been considering with a number of my right honourable friends, including my right honourable friend, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government, particularly in looking at what we can do in response to the Alexis J report on Rotherham. Of course, my right honourable friend is about to make his own statement on the Louise Casey inspection, and government will be coming forward with a number of proposals which will hit at the very issues that my honourable friend has raised, because he's right, we do need to look at issues around training and coordination in terms of bodies that are looking at incidents or potential incidents of child sexual abuse today.
Mr. Justin Tomlinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I very much welcome this measured statement. Would the Home Secretary confirm that absolutely no hiding place, regardless of time, status or influence, for those involved in these abhorrent acts?
I'm very clear that this inquiry should go where the evidence takes it, that there should not be any hiding place for anybody, and that we should be very clear that the aim of this inquiry is to get to the truth, to find out what happened, but crucially also to learn the lessons to make sure that this cannot happen again.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Can I too welcome this statement today, and can I ask my right honourable friend what financial resources will be available to the panel inquiry? Will they have the finances that they need to allow that inquiry to go where it takes them, or will they face any constraints?
I'm very clear that government, having set up this inquiry, will be responsible for ensuring that the inquiry has the resources that it needs to be able to do the work that we all want it to do, and that is what we will be doing.
Order. Statement, the Secretary of State for Communities and Local Government. Secretary Eric Pickles.
With permission, Mr. Speaker, I wish to make a statement about Rotherham Council. Last August, Professor Jay's report into child sexual exploitation in Rotherham described how vulnerable children have been repeatedly failed by a council paralysed by complacency, institutionalised political correctness, and blatant failures of political and officer leadership. With such serious documented failures, I told the House last September that it was clearly in the public interest, in order that a statutory inspection of Rotherham Council. I appointed Louise Casey to undertake a formal best value inspection of the Council. Today, her inspection report has been laid before the House and published. I would like to thank Louise Casey and her inspection team for their hard work in producing this thorough report. This report presents a disturbing picture of a council failing in its duty to protect vulnerable children and young people from harm. It reveals the Council's failure, both past and present, to accept, understand and combat the crime of child sexual exploitation. It concludes this culture of denial is intrinsic and has resulted in a lack of support for victims and insufficient action against known perpetrators. It also confirms a complete failure of political and officer leadership in Rotherham. Let me outline some of the report's conclusions. Poor governance is deeply seated throughout the council. There is a pervading culture of bullying, sexism, suppression and misplaced political correctness which has cemented the council's failures. Both members and officers lack the confidence to tackle difficult issues for fear of being seen as racist or upsetting community cohesion. The council is currently incapable of tackling its weakness without substantial intervention. The council's lack political leadership. It is directionless and it is not clear what kind of organisation it wants to be or how it wants to get there. It is clear that the political leadership of the council is unable to hold officers to account, and there is an inability of all members to properly represent the interests of local people. Some councillors have not lived up to the high standards expected of those in public life or their positions of responsibility. For example, the council goes to lengths to cover up and silence whistleblowers. It has created an unhealthy climate where people fear to speak out because they have seen the consequences of doing so. Management is ineffective. There is no coherence, senior leadership team, and no permanent chief executive. There is a poorly directed tier of middle management